Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. This is your host, Andrew Southern. I'm here today with Shawn Taher from Taher Incorporated. He's the COO, and they do all kinds of incredible food service stuff. Shawn, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, our pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
I'm sorry that I didn't do the most elegant intro there. Can you explain to the audience a little bit about your business and about what you guys do?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And just so you know, you've done it more elegantly than I've been called in the past. So we're already miles ahead. Uh,
Thanks.
so our business is made up of really sort of a handful of intertwined businesses inside of food and food service, ranging from really our core business of public and private K-12 food service to corporate dining, and we have some retail brands tied to that. We have a vending and really now a micro market company, which is that industry is changing quite a bit as a result of COVID and frankly of just overall maturity. Plus, we then independently own a wholesale bakery, which produces truckloads of product on a daily basis, as well as then three fresh and frozen grab and go brands that sell both retail and support all these other businesses that I mentioned.
Wow.
Along the way, we've picked up, we have our own distribution network, but we've also picked up having our own farm. So I have a 210-acre organic farm here in the Midwest, which we're really, really proud of, as well as a fair amount of philanthropic and family foundation events.
Amazing. And what's your market? Like, where are you guys?
So we're in 25 states today, coast to coast, border to border. We have about 3,300 employees with the expectation that we should cross 4,000 employees in 2021.
Wow. That's a big organization. So how did you become COO? Where did that come from?
Well, some of it is frankly just being a part of a family business, and then some of it is just a lot of investing in yourself and investing in people and working your heart out to become a better leader, a better communicator, and at least in my case, a more patient leader to grow. My younger self is not nearly as patient as today. My wife would probably tell you I'm still not very patient, but I'm certainly more today. But I have been cursed, if you will, with this desire to keep things growing and pushing and pushing. And again, sort of leadership of the past might have felt that I was ungrateful for how people or what people are doing. And I still frankly struggle to make sure that I recognize the stuff more regularly. But we
Sure.
just like to grow and push. I mean, as I shared, when we started, we are in 5 very different industries that we have intertwined. We weren't always that way, and I
Okay.
frankly am fortunate that I have a boss who also happens to be my dad, but that has really embraced and allowed that sort of entrepreneurship within the organization, so that we can broaden while growing. If I
It sounds
can
amazing.
ramble, yeah, if I
Well,
can
well,
ramble for just another second,
yeah,
diversification has been a huge part of our goal. You
sure.
know, 2008 taught us that you can lose an entire organization. I mean, prior to that, we had 16 restaurants, and that just demolished our restaurant business uh, with the downturn. So
Hmm.
we've really made a concerted effort to have some diversification in our business so that we can balance out these sort of black swan events.
So you're resilient.
We're trying.
So I think there's more to this story. So back it up. How did this business start? Who
Yeah, so
started
my
this in
dad's
your
an
family?
immigrant. Yeah, my dad immigrated from the Middle East in 1964, and so as you can imagine, in the 60s, the best job you could get, as many hours as you really wanted, was as a dishwasher working in a kitchen. And so that's really sort of our basis, and we have just grown from there. In 1981, ironically, the exact same year I was born, my father quit his job when I was 5 weeks old and decided to start what is now Taher Incorporated. And at the time, frankly, Andrew, the goal was very simple. It was to have enough business so that my dad could go fishing on the weekends. That was it.
That's the
That
goal,
was
which is
it.
a great clear goal, right? Like
Yeah.
that is clear headed. So, but
Yeah. I
there
want to
must have
have
been a
enough
time.
business, take care of my family, and then go
Amazing.
fishing.
Did he like he's at some point scored a great contract to do like a food service for a school or something? Like there was like a
Kind
was there
of, but
like
I
a
mean, the
moment?
truth is, we have a much more simple kind of Billy Bean model, right? Like, let's just get on base every time, every year. Let's just keep getting on base.
Mhm.
take swings, try things, get on base, take swings, you know, and of course, along that ride, you make an acquisition here, you pick up a nice big contract there, you know,
Wow.
but it isn't a culmination of doubles and triples, right? It's hitting, we've been just very steady. We've probably grown at a very steady rate for the last now 40 years. We'll celebrate our 40th anniversary in May, of about 5 to 8%, with a couple of leap years
Sure.
in there. Uh,
Yep.
so I think we'll see. Like last year was poised to be a leap year. COVID, obviously, from a revenue standpoint, doesn't reflect our growth as well as it was sort of forecasted.
Sure.
But I believe that the team that Taher has built, particularly in the sales department, will see a couple consistent leap year growth years. At least that's our goal.
That's an amazing story. I must think like in the 80s, like there's other competitors in the well, your first market was where you
K
are
12
now.
and our first markets were public schools
Yep.
and senior assisted living.
So you could come in as the sort of like new company with a maybe a better product or whatever. However your dad made you guys more attractive contract.
Relationship.
Okay.
And then obviously along the ride make some promises in the contract and such. But what's wildly different is the regulation.
Okay.
Uh, because these are all, particularly in the public schools, these are all federally funded programs. So as everyone has seen over the last 40 years, the government, regardless of which side of the aisle, they each sort of lay further claim into the world, if you will, and pretend that they know better. So there was way less regulation on pricing. I mean, if a school wanted to have fresh chefs in a school, you could do it. You just reflected that in the bid price, and you had to make sure that you honored it, and the district had to have the money, and you had some financial commitments.
Right.
And now those days are just tougher because we have a very low bid wins system in federal feeding.
Got it. So it needs to be a lot more like optimized would be the nice way to put it.
Yeah, that's probably a nice way of putting it. I mean, it should be optimized. I mean, to be honest with you, part of the reason that we have these different business units is in essence to have optimization, right?
Right.
That
Yep.
intertwinedness is in essence to build efficiency, because we believe we can do it either at better scale or better integrity or better cost or some combination of all three. But we need there to be some understanding that you can have good food and you can have chefs. It doesn't have to be like overly expensive, but it doesn't need to be 90 cents either.
Okay. Yep.
You know,
Uh, I've actually got a bunch of questions. There's a little bit. Well, we'll come back around. So, do you guys operate the facilities, or do you come into a facility that's been built for food service, like at a school, for instance? Like they have a cafeteria which is
correct,
equipped with stuff, right? It's got
correct,
ovens and refrigerators.
correct. And
But
obviously, if there's other stuff we want, we bring it.
okay,
Uh, and it's certainly part of those discussions at the beginning. It's certainly part of the bid process, depending on not maybe not so much in the public schools where they give you points for how much investment, which is
mhm,
frankly part of the benefit of what the federal government has done is it is even the playing field in the sense that if you have a $15 billion company and you could come in and basically say, listen, Andrew, I'll give you $250,000 for your contract, blah, blah, blah. And I can only come in and say, give you 25 grand. It does even
mhm.
that playing field.
Okay, yep.
So that's a good thing, frankly. But they bring you basically the equipment and the space, and then we bring in the people and the programs and the marketing and the chefs, and then we source all the food, write all the menus, and then obviously serve it.
Uh, Related to that, are the contracts generally speaking? They're not retail contracts. They're like, you're paid to feed everybody on a campus, on a corporate campus, irregardless of price, or do you have an actual point of sale that each employee or student is actually paying?
We do it. So the answer is all of the above.
Okay.
It just depends on you'd mentioned earlier having where you had gone to school. Odds are that was a different system than say Detroit or Atlanta or Minneapolis or Chicago public schools.
Sure.
They're just different. And then in the corporate dining space, it's very cash based, P&L. It's like running a restaurant, and
Okay.
frankly, in many cases, you're actually paying to be there. So you're making a financial commitment to,
Got it. And you need that money back.
as if you're doing them a favor,
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, let me get into COVID a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's rewind to well, we're going to say February, March, because I think that's when most of my guests sort of started to see
Fair.
this. When did February, March
So let's start
2020?
let's start February 4th, 2020, right?
Okay.
So February 4th, 2020, I'm in Naples, Florida, with
Right.
a guy who I do some investing with, and my best friend, the guy who's my partner on one of my foundations, right? We're having a glass of wine outside of this little place, talking about, this COVID thing that's going on overseas, and is it really going to become a big deal? And then one side, I've got a 75-year-old, highly successful business guy, and on the other side, I've got a 35-year-old best friend, also wildly smart and successful. Two totally different opinions about what's going to happen, right?
Okay.
And then this friend of mine, he's like, I'm telling you guys, this is going to be a real big problem. And this other friend of mine is saying, do you know anybody with COVID? And I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, fair. I don't. So now you're sort of caught. So that's February. And then we start reading the news. We start going searching for it a little bit more, like, okay, what is really this thing they're talking about? It's now jumped over to the US, so we got to at least pay attention. We
Right.
operate in Oregon, we operate in California, so we operate in some of these states where they had started to see it. So by
Right.
default, we have to start planning for it. So I run our team really on a roadmap basis. Like, let's get ahead of the curve, not be reactive. I'm just not that smart. I can't be. I'm just not smart enough to react to all the different things that could go on. I'd rather be wrong about our guess and then tweak the knob.
Sure.
But at any rate, so really now you fast forward into, say, mid to late February. We're in that discussion. Okay, let's go through scenarios, everybody. If A, then pull lever A. If B, then
Hmm.
pull lever B. Blah blah blah. So we go through this whole kind of planning deal, and I'll never forget this. We have a client in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm driving back to Minneapolis from Madison with my dad, and we're going, what do we think's going to happen here, and how do we really be poised for it? And so we said, listen, there's going to be a shortage on packaging out of absolute nowhere. So let's buy a couple truckloads of it. Just spend the money. Let's put it at the dock, just in case, right? Just in
Packaging.
case. Packaging,
Cool. Okay.
packaging,
This has come up before. Just so you know, this has come up before in other conversations. This is amazing.
packaging.
Okay.
So we
Yep.
bought 2 trucks of packaging, just in case we were going to have to pivot our school business from served in school to prepackaged meals. Take our production kitchens and pivot them from fresh grab and go to making school meal kits, right?
Sure.
Because when the chips are down, the lion's share of our business is in these public schools, and so we have to make sure to always sort of take care of that component. Uh, so March 17th, or excuse me, March 16th, I believe was a Monday.
Hmm.
We go to the office, have our staff meeting. COVID is really kind of getting to be a hot topic at this point. I come home and my wife's like, I mean, are you guys dumb? Like, is anybody awake at the wheel over there? Why are you guys bringing people into the office right now?
Right. Wow.
And I'm like,
Okay.
wow. So I do some research, do some looking at it. I'm like, all right, let's do it. So March 17th, 2020, we closed our corporate office. And and because it's a family business, maybe I take it a little more personal. But to me, it's like turning the lights out at the White House.
Hmm.
When you say that your corporate office, the place where people from throughout the country, your entire organization should be welcome at any time, any day, is now restricted to visitors. That was a big deal for us, at least.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah. I can
so
imagine.
March 17th, we end up closing the office. I have a couch here in the office at the house. I mean, I think through March and April, I pretty much just slept in here, because the federal government really sort of took a hands-off approach, pushed it down to the governors. The governors asked for control of it, so they got it, right? Whether that was a good idea or bad idea is sort of water under the bridge. Governors said, maybe I don't really know what I should do. They push it down to the local level. So we have, let's just say, 325 public school clients. Now you have 325 people doing something potentially very different than each other.
Sure. Right.
So my 4 lever roadmap model was partially useful, but not when you have that much independent, there's an author I've read, I forget who, but he says, people are emotional and irrational. Uh, and in the case of the beginning of COVID, the emotion that I sort of use as a metaphor is it's like people being in like a lake or an ocean. Like people are deathly afraid of being in the lake or the ocean, in part because they just don't know what's below their feet.
Sure.
What's there, I don't know. And COVID was that times 100, right? Like what's below my feet? What's next? And that fear of the unknown just drove wild, erratic decision making. And so we, as a service provider, have to really coach and work through that with our people, with our own employees, and with our clients. And so the beginning of COVID was very much communication outbound to all of our stakeholders, employees, clients, et cetera. Here's what we're doing. Here's our resources. This is what we're doing. We're following the CDC in this regard. We're extending our plan to this. And then really by the next week, that letter was garbage. Shows like, okay, this has gotten, more serious. So now we've ordered sanitation stations for all. So this is how this is going to work. This is how we're reducing visitors. And so really for the first probably 4 to 6 weeks, we were doing a ton of outbound communication. And then frankly, we had to get into triage, because now all of a sudden we have a sizable corporate dining business. Well, guess what? That's zero. That went to zero overnight, because offices were shutting down for what was supposed to be a couple of weeks. And so, your information coming up from your team is really like, who's open? What are they thinking? Da, da, da. Like that's what we talk about. We meet every single day as a leadership team. And then certainly at the beginning, I was meeting 3 days a week with each of the sort of the VPs or sort of business heads to say, just on the topic of like what's happened since last week when we talked, what's opening, what's closing, and what are your, what's the client communication looking like. And so that was really certainly the first couple of months. And then as I shared, it was now we have all these businesses that have basically either gone to zero. The schools took a swan dive at the beginning because they just closed. They weren't even thinking about hybrid and whatnot. So there was just zero.
Yep.
So businesses are closed and schools are closed, and frankly, even our manufacturing businesses are all on pause. The whole world just paused.
Right.
So you basically go to zero revenue for say 2 to 3 weeks, if you will. We made a commitment at the beginning of COVID to not furlough, no pay cuts, just none of that. And we made that commitment under the assumption that it was and if you were a closed location and salaried, you didn't lose anything. And even if you had insurance, we covered your insurance. Mm-hmm. We made that decision on the premise that this would say go through April. We'll review it in April. April came, okay, let's kick it into May, right? May came, like, all right, let's do it. Now you're sort of pot committed, and there was no end in sight. But it has proven, frankly, to be a really great component for our culture to keep people engaged and keep them around. People that had locations that say closed, because after the world paused, we, as I had shared with you earlier, we bought these truckloads of product. So now all of a sudden, like hybrids becoming a thing, remotes becoming a thing. And so we took our production kitchen and our menu for school lunch and converted it into prepackaged components and started making 15, 20,000 of these a day. And wow. Because, again, we have our own distribution network, we're able to get it to at least the places within, say, 4 or 5 hour drive of each of our kitchens, right? Sure. That didn't cure all the pain, but at least it helped us cover a really large portion of the Midwest.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
There's something about like that early time, like we've likened it in the past to like it's like being stuck in an elevator. Like if you're in the elevator, it's like, all right, I'm in the elevator. Like, how long am I going to be in this elevator for? It's like one thing to be in the elevator, right? I'm okay for now, I guess. But like, am I in here for an hour or am I in here for like 3 days? And someone like, for sure. That's the part with the leaders that I've spoken with. That's like, you can't tell how long that's going to be. So like you said, like you're covering everybody and making sure that they're taken care of. But it's like, what have we committed now forever for that? Like when do we actually start making some money again?
Well, now you're into a year plus, and so that question you're asking is a very, very valid one for that everyone's going through. The decision you made then, if you didn't adjust it midway, you have created a new behavior, and you have to ask
Right.
yourself how do you go back from it, and do you go back?
It's great for morale, and it's great to help keep people like paid, and I'm sure that
Hmm.
they'll be even more loyal to you, and that is awesome,
That's the
right?
hope.
That's the right thing. But at some point, like, you gotta still have a business to open,
So
right?
you do. So it's really interesting that uh, people often ask us, so are we a for-profit company or a lifestyle company? Uh, because we're independent, we're family owned, we could
Sure.
be whatever we want at that point.
Yep.
The the essence of what you're saying is true, right? At some point, you have to get back to revenue, profitability, etc. But like at least for me, like I can't. That's just even just saying it here in this kind of casual discussion. It just doesn't. That sentence just doesn't sit right. To me, it seems easier. This may be why you lose followers or people go, that guy's insane. It seems easier to go find more business and find the opportunity in the crisis. Like at the beginning of COVID, we put a phrase across everywhere that says never waste a crisis. There is
Mm-hmm.
going to be stuff here, right? And I fundamentally believe that. In 2008, I was too young to really know how to take advantage of the downturn, but I was smart enough to go, there's people making good money, there's people doing things and moving in this sort of environment. And so when this one came, we said, okay, wait, like this is a trigger.
Right.
Let's pounce on this. So we really lived by this never waste a crisis. So I have found it easier. Like I said, let's find the other avenues. How
Got it.
can we make
Yep.
more money? How can we take displaced workers and put them back to work? Because, for example, we were making zero K-12 meals prepackaged on March 17th, and on
Exactly. Right.
March 23rd, we're ramping up to try and make 20,000.
Amazing.
So all of a sudden, you need people, right? Which was a huge commodity, and frankly, still continues to be one of the toughest parts of being in the, service business, not like tech or cloud based or something to that effect. But
Sure.
uh, so we took these displaced workers and ramped up whole production lines, right? To
That's amazing.
keep it moving. For us, it was easier to find those avenues. It was easier for us to take our network of manufacturing friends and food service companies and say, look, I mean, I'm buying fill in the blank product for 40 to 50 cents a pound less than you are. Why don't you, like, I'll charge you 20 cents premium on what
Mm-hmm.
I pay, and you buy it from me. You
Yep.
save 20 cents, I make 20 cents. And then we just like, for us at least, it was like, how do you generate cash flow? And then cash flow turned into how do we generate cash flow and margin? Because at the beginning, to your comments, like, listen, let's just keep cash in the system.
Right.
We'll figure out how to pay for all of our decisions later. Uh, but that's really for
Wow.
us, to be honest with you, Andrew. For me, it's way easier to figure out how to have more business and have broader opportunities for people, so that we can keep our culture alive than it
Mm-hmm.
is to call somebody. I mean, we ended up making some furloughs for like 2 and 3 week furloughs because we figured, okay, this could just be another few weeks or whatever. I made
Right.
11 of them sitting here at this desk. These are people I know. I mean, these aren't. I mean,
Yeah.
two of these people were in my wedding.
Yep.
These aren't just random people. I mean, this is a family business started by an individual and his wife. My two parents that want to just have enough business to go fishing on the weekends. I mean, that's just our culture.
That's amazing. I
So
mean,
when you got to
you
let
were able
people go,
to.
that's a hard discussion to have.
Yeah, I can
But
imagine.
but people are interesting too, though, because you know what's fascinating about having a lot of employees is when you get this wonderful surprise, right? You make that call. Someone's like, I knew you were going to call. You're like, oh man. And they're like, I understand what's going to happen, and I'm here. Like, I got it. You just tell me how many weeks you need. I got you. Like, you just keep fighting your fight. I'll do
Mhm.
my part. And all of a sudden, you're like, wow, like we are surrounded by incredible people that are so selfless. Like now you feel
Mhm.
like ultra guilty, and that's not their intent, but you're just so grateful because you have these people who were and can frankly continue to be. I mean, I had a guy yesterday, he says, I've got no projects on my for horizon for the next 12 days. Do you want me to take furlough? I'm like, what? No, I don't.
Right.
But the mere selflessness in people willing to make that discussion, make that decision is just amazing.
It sounds incredible. That whole story, but the people, your team sounds amazing. And then the idea, I thought it makes a lot of sense. This idea of like, instead of trying to like reopen something which is clearly going to be closed for a while, right? It became more and more clear. Go and find other avenues. You've got this incredible, you've got facilities, you've got distribution, you've got product that you're getting and moving through. Like people are still need to eat lunch, let's say, but they need to eat it prepackaged over here instead of over there. And we can,
That's right.
I guess the balance is like, you're a pretty big company, right? Or big and pretty big to be able to then move that ship like in another direction nimbly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
We're an agile barge. Like I like
Agile
to drive,
barge.
yeah, I like to drive Formula One cars, but we're big enough that we got to, if we turn too fast, the container's going to fall off. So we got to be somewhere in the middle. But I'll tell you, if I can speak to what you're just referring to, you're dead on. Like, so COVID came and then behaviors changed, but we still had people, right? We still had, we had millions of dollars of inventory that were just sitting there, right? I mean, so you had stuff you wanted to use, you had people you wanted to use. And so to the credit of our team, I shouldn't even say they really created two incredible ideas out of our corporate dining team. One is they created a totally online, basically convenience store for the employees that were there. So they'd say something effective like, hey, Chef Chris is still your guy. If you still want Chef Chris's, I don't know, lomo saltado, you can get it now like this. But while you're online buying, pick up some eggs, pick up some toilet paper, pick up some hand sanitizer. Here's some flour. Here's a pound of that ground beef that you love and that cheeseburger you eat all the time.
Right.
And they created this beautiful e-com platform for our corporate dining team the people. I mean, it didn't save the day, but it made a huge difference. I mean, it kept a lot of people that would have otherwise been faced with some, particularly in the hourly employee category, reduced hours or furloughed, right? And it really helped these people drive some revenue. Any revenue counts at that point. Revenue counts at that point.
Yep.
And I mean, we had one location that comes to mind. They were doing almost $3,000 a day selling flour, crackers, toilet paper. I mean, just the stuff that you knew people needed. And so to their credit, huge win there. And then there was this, ghost kitchens were just becoming a topic. And so we weren't necessarily coming at it from a ghost kitchen standpoint, but we took the same approach, minus say getting on a DoorDash or Bite Squad or whatever. But we took that approach to our our follower base and email database. That's right.
Got it. I'm gonna clarify to the audience. So a ghost kitchen is well, maybe you should actually, Shawn. Explain a ghost kitchen.
So ghost kitchen in essence is a restaurant in the cloud, if you will. It's you have a physical space, and because you have the space and the internet, you can make as many brands out of the internet as you want out of that space. And you typically partner with any one of the delivery companies that are out there, and you have say 3 or 4 concepts or flavors, if you will, out of one kitchen. And you put some social media together, and you get it really, a really great following and some community around it, and an online order platform provided by all these other companies, and voila,
you've got a new company that will deliver like the best, whatever hamburgers or whatever it is.
Yeah, chicken
but
wings, rotisserie.
It's from the capacity. It's from the capacity of an existing kitchen. And I had heard about ghost kitchens the first time from like hearing about like Applebee's or TGI Fridays was like repurposing their additional capacity that they weren't using to basically serve meals out the back door through this other platform with a complete different brand ID.
Yeah, it's genius, really. I think
genius.
At the time, it really is. It really is. I mean, I sat on a panel at the beginning of COVID, similar to an interview like this one, and this guy says that this is what he was doing out of New York. And I'm like, this guy might be dubbed a genius soon.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really smart idea. And it kept everybody working. It kept food moving. Of course, that's a smart idea. If people aren't coming to a restaurant because they can't, it's closed. Well, the
Right.
kitchen is still working. So, Shawn, let me ask you, this progressed, have you been able to reopen, or I should say, have your customers
So
reopened their facilities?
it's a great question. So our corporate dining locations, no,
Okay.
really in essence, no. The schools have been really different. I mean, schools have they've obviously gotten a lot of time on the news, so not necessarily need to educate your audience on how that's gone. I mean, hybrid, remote, in, out.
Sure.
You know, kids will go into school and they go, oh, never mind. 3 days later, yank them out of school. So that is it's been consistently volatile. Period. That's probably the best way. I mean, there's no one way to skin the cat. There's a handful of ways that we, like I said, have tried to give our people some guidance on, and then tweak them, or dial the knobs as need be.
Sure.
The private schools have done this very differently, and I'll tell you, the states have done it wildly different. We're based here in Minneapolis, and if I go to some of our clients in Texas or in the South, frankly, or even the Southwest, they were open.
Right.
So they expect all the service, all the offerings, all the variety, all the. Meanwhile, you still have to follow, all the safety protocols and such. But they're like, listen, I paid, or I agreed for this package in the proposal, and we're still putting kids in the school.
So, yeah. So
And
what's
so,
different? Right.
what's different? Politics aside, in some of these
Huh.
states, they believe that it was business as usual. Some had success, some didn't, but that's not what we're here to judge.
Sure.
Then you come north, and it's COVID, front and center, everything. Uh, and then,
So
like I
you
said,
can't.
go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, no, please.
I was going to say, you can't. Or I maybe put it the other way. Could you then standardize how you're going to do your sort of health and safety across the different states? You'd be like, well, Taher does it this way. Like we are going to. Everybody that comes to work does whatever temperature sensing, but everyone that comes into our dining room has to do this as well. Like, can you dictate that, or
So we
do
can
the?
dictate the first half, not the second.
Got it. Okay.
So the school districts dictated the second. Kids in the
Okay.
classroom, kids coming through the line, they're controlling that. Our challenge is to make sure that our communications team and our operating team is at the table, communicating the ways that we can handle it, the ways that, because right or wrong, you still have a business to run. You need participation and you need revenue. So if you don't force your way to the table, someone's going to make a decision for your business
Right.
with you having zero input.
Got it.
And
So
that's a
you want to
dangerous
be there.
game. You want to be
Sure.
there. So whether they physically allowed you to be there or you do it through communication campaigning and make however, whether you do it social, digital, hard copy, whatever. But you need your voice at that table so that you have the best possible shot, if nothing else, at your business model
Sure.
having a chance to win.
It's actually an extension of the friction that I think we identified in the beginning, which is like, all right, I've got a facility. It's got a kitchen. It's got refrigerators and stuff like that. You're going to come in and operate, right? And you're going to bring the food and you're going to deliver it to the people and sell it to the people per a contract. There's like new health and safety regulations that comes right against that sort of like facility meets operator thing, like that
It
line.
does, but I tell you, Andrew, the masks and the sanitation and
Yeah.
and the visitor policies and our policy for deliveries and sanitize, we have, I mean, we've stayed steadfast.
Mm.
One thing we did at the very beginning of COVID, and we really did all the way up until September, is we did half on, half off. It wasn't about pay, but we didn't want anybody like at a school or an office building, et cetera, to have the food service shut down because of exposure. So we said, all right, Team A, you're this week and the third week. Team B, you're weeks 2 and 4. And so we always had people that just in case we had to
Yep.
quarantine somebody, we didn't quarantine the whole thing,
Sure.
right? And so we have stayed steadfast on those. We have not wavered on what we believe to be acceptable. Even if the state has say pulled a mask mandate,
Right.
we've communicated with all of our clients and all of our employees. I understand your state has said that. Our policy is that you'll still come to work with these, PPE components.
Right, exactly, and for the people that, like, if you're operating in a corporate kitchen or something like that, your people are like behind the line, or well, I would say like sort of behind the table or whatever in the kitchen. You can dictate what they're wearing and what they're doing to be safe.
We can,
If
and
the
we should.
people in the if the people in the office have been told they don't need to wear masks anymore or whatever, that's on the other side of the table. They
For
can
sure.
still get their food, right? So that's how you manage that line as it comes to health and safety. That's interesting. What about
Well,
in your actual facilities? Like, you have distribution
we
hubs, I
do, but
guess, and
I want to add on to first for a second. We also are in the customer experience and customer perception business.
sure,
And so, regardless of what, say, the office team is allowed to do, they need confirmation that the services that they're using, whether it be the grocery store, a restaurant, et cetera, are following these intangibles that make you feel comfortable on the inside.
sure.
And so, if you go to a restaurant, if you went to any restaurant today and you saw people without gloves and no mask on, you'd be like, wait a second here, right? It just so we're in that public perception business no matter what.
Of
So we
course.
have to stay sort of toe the line, if you will. At our
So
facilities,
yeah,
which is a great question because at our manufacturing facilities, it is difficult to social distance, uh, and it was very difficult because I did require them at the beginning to do half on, half off. So midway through, so about May, June, I was introduced to a company called Viral Sign. And Viral Sign is a pre-symptomatic screening technology. It is not reading, I mean, it can read your temperature, sure, but
right.
we put this system into all of our large facilities. And so every employee is required to go through the camera. And what it is reading, it's reading 16 different spots on the face and neck, reading the vascular system and looking for abnormality.
Hmm.
It is not diagnosing.
Sure.
It is simply identifying that there is something abnormal in your vascular system, and you may, depending on how it scores, want to go have something checked. So
I'm very familiar with these systems. I totally get it.
that has been a lifesaver for us. We have had in more than one occasion where someone came in flagged as either elevated or risk, right?
Hmm.
And we took them out of circulation, had them go get a COVID test, and I'll be damned positive.
Uh-huh. And you pulled them out.
Pulled them out, so I don't have to close anything down. Now I'm short a person, but and I think what our team did very successfully is we actually then took care of our people with care packages. Like, I'm a big, anti-inflammatory diet person. I believe that what you eat causes a huge amount of inflammation in your body. So because COVID is an inflammation based issue, so we would then send little care packages with our people
Hmm.
home of food so that they,
So they would
knock
eat
on
right.
wood. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I haven't had COVID, but the ones on our team that have, it does not sound fun. And
Right.
certainly there's a population of asymptomatic people, and they're like, I had a cough, but I also have a population of people that work for me that have had it pretty bad.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. It seems to really run the gambit.
it
Well,
does.
so let me ask you, Shawn, what do you think is like what safety measures in your industry will
Mhm.
survive beyond the, like, drive for vaccines and herd
Yeah,
immunity and all this stuff? Like, there are some things that will likely survive that, to your point, speak to people's, like, need to feel safe, and frankly, from an operational perspective, are probably good business for,
yeah.
like, the next flu season or whatever, to, like, have in place forever, right?
It's a great question. I don't have a really good answer. I'll tell you
Yeah.
two things for sure. One is you commented on the flu, which is a really great observation. One of the guys who works for us who ended up getting flagged by the camera and ultimately had COVID says to me that I don't really feel that bad. I mean, if it were pre-COVID, I'd be honest with you, I'd have gone to work.
Sure.
And you're like, okay, wait a minute. Uh, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I don't really have a good answer for you, because people make equally irrational decisions. I see masks staying around for a while. I just do. The face shield is certainly not the face shield and the mask, but
Hmm.
I see one of them for
Yep.
sticking around. Um, Sanitizing stations are here forever. I mean, maybe not forever, but for quite a while. I mean, there's this sort of mental comfort in, getting your hand under that thing and,
Sure.
you just feel
It's
like, oh,
easy.
okay, I'm safe. It's super easy.
It's low touch. Yeah, it's low
Yeah.
touch.
Social distancing, I don't see, these dots on the floor. I don't see that long term, and it certainly doesn't work well in manufacturing. In manufacturing, we're better served to find ways to screen them before they come in than we are to try and figure out how to space people out.
The viral sign. Like, do you think you'll maintain that system?
I do. I was actually asked that question by my team yesterday, is how long do I want to keep that contract? I will keep it as long as it's effective.
Hmm.
Uh, as long as there's a reason to have and screen people out at that level, right? The flu, while people get sick, it doesn't require you to shut things down. You know,
Right.
right now, you're not in town, and last week I was not in town either. And is per the CDC, if I leave the country, I have to quarantine at home for 10 days. That's not sustainable long
Right.
term. So something will ultimately have to give there. The flu, as I shared, doesn't shut companies down, and I'm in no position to comment what I think COVID would do. Would it become like the flu or not? I'm nowhere near an expert to make that comment. But I do see really uh, tighter policies on if you're sick, stay home. I think
Right.
sick time policies are in the radar right now for a lot of companies. Uh, if it's not COVID and it's the flu for a second, I mean, do you want to still honor the same sick benefits that you have had for your COVID policy? A lot of companies are going to really wrestle with that decision.
Sure.
It is an intangible or sort of a non-comp benefit that is a useful tool to attract people to come to work for you, but it's not cheap and it's certainly not free. Uh,
Right.
so that's a big issue for us to really review in the front as we look ahead. I do see viral sign really staying for probably another through 2021.
Sure.
Um, it's a question really of what do I need to screen for after COVID would determine what we use viral sign for next.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the idea is that like, and because I've done some work with these like detect these systems which can sense elevated temperatures, right?
Right.
And will alert if something's abnormal. Very similar to what you were describing, and everybody's sort of aware of how their health in public spaces can affect other people's health in public spaces, and vice
Yeah.
versa. Like that become very very clear in the past 12 months that like, you know what, if you have a fever, you probably should stay home. Like I think that
Right.
everyone can kind of agree. Like, don't get on the plane. Don't go to the factory today. Like it's
I'm
better to
telling
stay
you,
home.
it is, but you're
Um,
talking about a lot of people who need the money.
no, I get it. So like that's where that tension is because if you know it's okay to stay home for a couple days, and without of course abusing it, then you would, and then you would end up kind of saving everyone else from potential um, illness. It's like it's balancing act. I can see how that can be very difficult when you have a large team. Also,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we take it. So our leadership team meets 4 days a week still, and we take this topic on Wednesdays. Every Wednesday, it's sort of a what's like benefits, what's the future of our labor
Sure.
and such look like. It's a topic that's very, very alive right now.
You are the chief operating officer, right? I mean,
Yeah,
this is it.
this is it. This is my world. This is what I deal
Amazing.
with this and growth. Are what I deal
Yeah.
with on a very regular basis. But and then there's this whole like discussion on mandating the vaccine, and fortunately that you know. So back to one of your original questions. So go back to February, then we go to March, right? So summer comes, and it's just sort of the wild, wild west. Like more kids are taking meals than we've at least experienced in the past, which is great. September comes, the government can't quite decide what they're going to do from a regulatory and reimbursement and waiver standpoint. So they come out and make a statement that says, we will extend the current waiver till September 30th or until the program runs out of money. Well, everyone heard only that. So
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, well, maybe we won't even sign up for the waiver because who knows, blah, 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 blah. Fair, totally fair. So, or excuse me, till August 31st. August 31st comes, and then he finally, at the very last second, extends the waiver for the rest of the school year. It's too much change, right? It's too much
Mm-hmm.
uncertainty
Mm-hmm.
in a system, frankly, like an education system that is its root success behavior is structure, right? Organization and structure.
Right.
They don't want last minute changes, right?
Yep. Yep.
You've gotta get a lot of people moving in a lot of different directions at a very quick pace to do that. So
Yeah.
uh, so the beginning of the school year is sort of all over the board. Schools want to be open, not open. So that's just sort of, like I said earlier, consistent volatility. What changes is the number of people participating. At the beginning of COVID, people are all in. Like it's a pandemic. We unified so well as a country for a little while, and everyone participated in the programs that are available. School year comes, they extend the waiver. They go, well, look, I appreciate that it's free lunch, but I'm maybe middle upper or something class. I don't need the free meal. So, but I'm really glad that our country has stepped up to take care of this group. So now your participation numbers just take a swan dive. Now your
Right.
whole business model is like, okay, driving participation. Now, as we look to the future, and it's a question of really, uh, our school's going to reopen, and I think they're running out of reasons to stay closed for the
Right.
remainder of the school year,
Yep.
uh, and that's
So
going to
you
have a
have to.
totally different model.
I was gonna say you're gonna have to like. There is a time in the not too distant future where those things all open, right? You
Yep,
open back up
yep,
in the same way that the contract states, which is like in person dining,
yep,
fresh food service,
yep.
and then offices as well. I mean, I've talked to some folks that are working in corporate interiors, and the
Okay.
drive, this idea that like the corporate office is dead is not a real thing. Like
No,
people, like
not at all.
there may be less days, but the desire to maintain the culture of your business, which happens in person and doesn't really happen very well on Zoom, is there. And again, it may be 4 days a week or something, but you end
Mm-hmm.
up needing to come to work. A lot of great stuff happens when like people get together. I
100%.
mean, imagine having new hires that were hired only on Zoom, and you got to get them in the room to like
Well, and
get the
Andrew, a lot of
vibe.
great stuff happens both in person, but now add food to it, right? I mean, there's
Yeah,
this the coming together that food brings is, I mean, really part of why we love being in this business.
cool. Yeah,
So I'm with you. I mean, culture happens in person, and companies are going to come back. It's a question of really when. Uh, we had this discussion in our staff meeting actually yesterday. While vaccine rates are ramping, I'm guessing we're a 30 to 60-day tail
hmm,
on reopening. So you'll see, and if you've listened to anything else I've been interviewed for, I've said consistently, you cannot have return to work without return to school. So if they don't return to school first, there is no return to work. So
right.
we'll be
Yep.
a trailing lead on the offices, say by 2 to 4 weeks on when kids are back in school. Uh, so you'll go school first, offices, and then next year really kids should be back in school. The What remains to be unseen is will they have to pay for lunch or not?
Got it. Because of that same program that may continue?
So, yes. Now I'm going to get a little political for a second. The Democrats have as good a chance as they'll ever have in modern history, probably, at least in my opinion, to put together a universal school lunch.
Okay.
We've had plus or minus 18 to 20 months of it being free. You've got a little bit of an extension of the waiver. They have a milestone $1.9 trillion package that they just put through, $3 trillion package that they're talking about. Could probably get the votes if they really wanted them, to be quite honest with you, right? They have as good a chance as they'll ever have to put in universal school lunch. And while it is a long shot, there is an offshoot shot that they do it, and that will then totally change what next year looks like. Because you wouldn't be able to pass that and have it take effect next year. You'd have to put together a gap bill or a gap budget for next year.
In order to just kind of continue doing the way we're doing it, subsidize the meals, and then we're going to roll out this thing. Because
universal school lunch in 2022.
Got it. And that would really be a big thing for your business, I'm sure.
To be determined. It will have a huge impact on our business. It's a question of what will the operating model and what would the food and what are until there's any real language or even speculative language coming out of Congress, it would be a waste of energy to guess.
Got it.
But it will certainly change.
Let me ask you this. If for a corporate office where you do food service, I'm sure that your salespeople are in touch with the people that you have that you have contracts with. How much time do you need to turn back on a kitchen?
So every week that goes by, the answer to your question, it gets longer because of people. The longer people have been out of work, the more likely they are to either A, be totally disengaged, B, find another job, or C, something else, I guess.
Okay.
So it becomes a question of what's the service model we open with. If you take a corporate cafe for a second, and let's say that 1,000 people, right? Are they bringing back 1,000? Are they bringing back 900? Are they bringing back 100? Right? Which will severely alter the decisions that we make. The value we have with this sort of intertwinedness that we were talking about earlier, having our own office services and vending and market company, is we invented a service that we've dubbed Fresh Seasons Express. So Fresh Seasons is our brand name, which is sort of a hybrid between a 24-hour market and hot food service. I look off to the side here. I apologize, but I have just stacks of pictures that I pulled off the internet. If I look to the future of corporate dining, and I hope none of our competitors listen to this, but I do believe this to be true. The future of corporate dining is much more a marketplace, like a grocery store, deli area is, than food service.
Okay.
Prior to COVID, the national average of participation rate at an office building is 35%. That, to me, as a not very smart math guy, says the math is backwards. 65% of people don't use our service, and we're spending a ton of energy to feed basically a third of the people.
So what are those people doing? Like they go out and they go to the deli or something, or 7-Eleven
and buy. They go to a deli. That's right. They bring it from their home. They go to Jimmy John's. They go to Jersey Mike's.
Right.
The behaviorist in me says they're getting fulfillment from something else because we are not providing that emotion for them. Right? It's not food variety. There's nothing that people go out and go get. I shouldn't say nothing. By and large, there's rarely something they can go get that we're not serving either that day or sometime that week. And we have, if you take a look at them, there's healthy, there's not healthy, there's convenience, there's take your time and wait. Corporate dining has so much variety in it today. People will tell you it doesn't. It's got tons and tons and tons. Arguably too much because you're trying to appease everybody, but you're still only capturing 1/3 of the math.
Right.
So the future of it has to acknowledge that what we were doing was dying. Right? It was each year participation rates were declining. It wasn't working. So just light that model on fire and move on. And like
And
I
this
said,
is a
for
good
us,
time, right? This is a
what
good
better
time to
time
rethink
than
that.
now?
Yeah.
Everything's been closed. They're all of your customers, assuming they're the same ones employed by the same companies, big asterisks,
Hmm.
they have forgotten what their dining experience was like in February of 2020. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
this is what, April of 2021. It's July at best that people are back in offices with any sort of amount of numbers.
And it could look totally different, and it would be fine. Like it would be like, oh, cool. I've got this cool like deli kind of situation or
Bingo.
something.
As long as
Yeah.
you is yes, is it as long as you really market it right, as you just described, you can
Yeah.
make a reinvention and have a lot of fun with it. And people, in my opinion, at least as a 40-year-old guy with two young kids on the move, I like getting cool stuff from the places that I'm already going. I don't
Hmm.
like having to stop a lot of places. I'm like probably most. I don't like taking my mask off to get in the car, putting my mask on to get back out of the car.
Sure.
It's a lot of, nonsense. So I genuinely believe that corporate dining will be more marketplace, like walking
Hmm.
into a beautiful deli, pre-packaged, pre-made sandwiches that you can either have hot or cold, quiches, mini pizzas that you can either eat cold or we can throw into like a turbo chef and reheat it for you, made
Yep.
fresh, right?
Yep.
Not bought, but still made and cool, made on site or made at say one of our production kitchens and distributed, but bring the variety and then extend the living hell out of service hours. What
Hmm.
what's a big excitement moving forward is computer vision and AI. Computer vision and AI and the Amazon Go stores are showing how it is obviously possible. And there are a lot of companies, Mashgin's one, Foods, another really great company. But the marriage of AI and computer vision is allowing you to not need cashiers
Hmm.
and to get very, very accurate checkout data.
Yep. I haven't done one yet, but a friend of mine went through the one of those Amazon sort of pop up
Yep.
retail stores where you just walk out with the stuff.
Yep. So I've been in
Yep.
a couple of them. There's a couple of them in Chicago. Uh, it's incredible.
Hmm.
I mean, the first time you're in there, you feel like you're stealing, but after you get
Yep.
past that, because your phone dings and it reminds you you just didn't steal, you just paid. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Exactly. It knew.
yeah, it's remarkable, and you have to ask yourself, at least in my business, what things are we doing that are bringing value back to the guest experience?
Hmm.
And is the
That would be.
cashier experience bringing value back? And yes, people will say, "Oh, of course, I love so and so." They smile, they tell me a joke. Great. Ask the guy or gal who's 15th in line while you're over here telling jokes if they are
Yeah.
enjoying the cashier experience, right?
Sure.
So people are very comfortable with self checkout, and the technology is there where it can identify what you have on your plate and pay it. And
Amazing.
I love this concept because the truth is like you want people to be able, like, people mindlessly spend money when they're not handing it to you.
It's the whole like Vegas chips thing, right? It's like as soon as they become
Right.
chips, they're like they don't have the same value, and you're just like
They don't.
whatever. Like
Whatever.
so
It's a
so
red one. It's a
so
green one.
exactly. So if it's just sort of like this bill that's existing off in the corner, and I can just get what I want, people don't think about it. I think you're right. That behavior. It's also easier. Like it's
It
actually a
is.
nicer way to do it. And you may end up getting a bit more money out of me too. But
You
for
might.
me, it's like cool. I just put the stuff on the plate and walked out.
And you can be open all the time now.
Right.
That's a
Right.
big deal.
Hmm.
This isn't just corporate dining. This is a school food service item as much as it is a retail food service item. People want to be able to get something really whenever they want. And who am I, the lunch guy, to tell you what time you eat lunch,
Right.
right? If you eat breakfast at 11, that's your business, not mine,
Sure.
you know. I'll tell you on that note, this all day breakfast thing is actually a pretty big deal. You know, of the locations that we have kept open, we switched everything to an all day grill menu. So there was
Right.
no breakfast lunch changeover anymore. Now you could get a burger at breakfast and an omelet at lunch, right? And obviously McDonald's kind of pioneered this for the industry. I gotta tell you, it works. It is amazing to me, really, how many omelets we sell at lunch and how many burgers we sell at breakfast.
How many burgers you sell at breakfast? Personally, I don't know if I would have a burger at breakfast, but I understand the idea of extending choice to people, because if people
Yeah,
want to pay you for something, you should give it to them and accept their cash in any form. Right? That's the way I
100%.
look at it.
I agree.
Like, I never understand when I like go somewhere and they like don't take American Express, for instance, right? It's like I could care less about like the chargeback or problem for you.
I know.
I'm trying to give you money and you're making
So
it difficult.
you say it exact. I say the exact same word. All I'm trying to do is give you money, right? Why are you making it hard for me to give you money? Your
Whatever the cost of
spa.
business is, I get it. Like if American, as an example, if they charge
Yeah.
more per transaction, I get it. But I don't mind if you cook it into the margins of the thing overall.
Yeah,
I just want to be able to like easily pay you and then
for sure.
move on with my
I
day. And
agree.
so any like business decision that you've made to like not accept pennies or whatever, it doesn't really matter to me, to be perfectly honest, you
Right.
know?
Right.
I have other things that I'm thinking about, and so I've never gotten that, and I don't have a high, point of sale business like you do, but I am a customer, and I
Hmm.
understand that that's annoying.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know how we got there from,
It
but you
is.
know what? We,
But I
we
mean,
are
people
talking about
want to
this.
pay how they want to pay, and they want to buy when they want to buy, and that's the future of our space. It really
Sure,
is.
that is redesigning like what's going on,
That's
right?
totally right.
That absolutely fits to this podcast.
Yeah. It will.
Shawn,
Both of our industries, just so our main ones, will be wildly redesigned. School
it's
lunch
amazing.
and corporate dining will not, frankly, be debatably resemblant of what it was January 2020.
I want to top on one more thing before we go, and I'm aware of your time. You have trucks, right? Do you have
We
actual
do.
like trucks moving around?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Like lots of them? Like
80.
different 80?
Yep.
80 like semi trucks, refrigerator trucks moving around.
Yep. Refrigerator and freezer trucks. No semis, but big,
Okay,
6 or 8 pallet trucks and vans and uh, no semis, but half semi and below.
you've got to have your eyes on electric trucks eventually. Are you
Yeah.
even thinking about it yet or not yet?
Very little. I'm more
Okay.
thinking about putting gas at the buildings than I am
Okay.
and buying
Okay.
gas in bulk. Um,
That's interesting. Right. So you can just fill up at the depot and then make it to the next place where you can fill up also. And there's
yeah,
no.
but you also have higher control on the cost of gas,
Sure.
less volatility in the cost of gas. And if you take a look what's going on right now in the Suez Canal today, I think they finally got this thing
I
freed
think they
up.
got
There's
it free.
300,
Yeah.
yeah, there's 340 ships that are stuck there. That's going to make an impact on gas prices. It just is. You can't ignore that.
Hmm.
Uh, we're in a geopolitical scenario where stability is not around the corner, and that's again not political. Trump did his thing his way. Biden's going to do his thing his way. My
Sure.
job is not to be a politician. My job is to take the information at hand and make good business decisions.
Got it.
When Joe Biden calls me and asks my opinion, I'll give it to him. But until that day comes, I will focus on the things I can control.
Well, he'll probably be listening to this podcast and then be
Oh,
like, then he'll
well,
give you a
Joe, if
call.
you listen, I'm here for you, Mr. President. Just give me a holler.
We got to talk about school lunches.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I really would. I mean, that's a phone call we would welcome. We're a sizable company that is highly focused on the food. We were more effective in feeding kids. I would say economically, being mindful at least of the financials for the school on behalf of the school. We didn't need the government to tell us how much to charge schools,
Mm.
right? There are other big companies that were at the table at that discussion, and that's sort of the way the chips fell. But if that phone call ever arose, we would answer that, to say the least.
You would pick up the call if the president
100%.
called.
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
No,
Good to know.
but I mean, really, it's as we look to the future, and back to your question on the electronic vehicles, we're a little ways away, in my opinion, before they are ready to go sort of in the masses.
Sure.
The barrier for us, at least, is the truck is actually taking something out. There's a function happening outside of just driving. So, for example, a person may be driving a vending truck or a market truck, and they're going to bring coffee and other sort of items to your office. The person has to be in the vehicle anyways.
Hmm.
So it doesn't really reduce the labor for us. And I don't see the math on how it's financially different. Um, and I'm not personally convinced that the batteries are better for the environment than the gas. I don't think that either of them, frankly, are great.
Hmm.
And I mean, I can't run a car on a sail like a sailboat. So I mean, I gotta pick one of the two. Uh, but
Sure.
but I am really happy to see him coming. Where I see it being a really big impact is over the road, the long
Yeah.
hauls.
Right. Long haul. Yep.
The long haul stuff, Andrew, is really concerning for us right now as COVID sees some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. Freight rates have gone up by 133%. And that's a lot of money. You
Sure.
know, if you say a full truckload of school sandwiches, let's just use as an example. There's 106,000 sandwiches on a truck, right? If the truck costs 3 grand, it's plus or minus, I don't know, penny, penny and a half, 2 penny, you know, a unit. If the truck costs 7 grand,
Right.
you know, and I'm selling the sandwich, let's just say for 75 cents.
Hmm.
10% of the cost, it's going to go up by 10% just to move it. And
Yep.
now people can't afford it. So
Yeah.
the freight is the long haul freight is a big deal. And where it's intriguing, I have an investment in a really wonderful company called Eat Purely. It's basically like in this home meal replacement, high end, clean label, vegan, gluten free, et cetera. And our sort of claim to fame is direct home delivery. The the final mile, I think, is more intriguing as well in EV
Sure.
than like the mid range than that we do a lot of. But
Hmm.
that final mile, if you could get uh, your food delivered EV through basically a, a autonomous vehicle that you walk out and go get it out of the vehicle, the final mile will be where like Uber Eats and some of these other companies, they have an opportunity. I mean, we've seen it with Domino's. Domino's has that little like mini pizza vehicle. I mean,
Yep.
basically envision that Domino's delivery car autonomous. That's attractive.
Yeah. It is. It's amazing. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
um,
Well, we're in a
Sean,
business that obviously people love, food people need, and they love it, and they're emotional about it. And so, as long as we stay active and engaged, we have a shot at having some fun in it.
it sounds like you really have a really good sense of pretty much all parameters of your business.
Well, I mean, by title, I'm required, if nothing
You're
else. But
supposed to. You're supposed to.
yeah,
But like, and then you're thrown like a curveball, which is a global
yeah.
pandemic,
Well,
right?
we're intertwined, right? And I mean, that intertwinedness, I think, as I shared with you earlier, I mean, we have to have our arms around as we build our business and keep having that intertwined and diversity in it. Uh, it's too new for us to let it run independent, and it's not our culture to let things run in a silo. So,
Hmm.
I have a good team of people that we are enterprise sort of people, and we're always kind of challenging each other to make sure, did you know that this was happening in this group's team? And you know that they just met with that person?
Right.
And, I'm hiring right now a new assistant or chief of staff to just manage calendars and make sure there's not like duplication of meetings and meeting agendas so that we're not misaligned. And that alignment, uh, if we don't get it under control, will be the death of any organization,
Yep.
especially a diverse one.
Wow. Sean, I want to thank you so much for your time today. This has been an awesome conversation. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the invitation.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on the
Have a good
podcast.
one.
I really,
Thanks so
really
much.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Be safe. Travel safe.
Thanks.